Pat Buchanan is with us. You ever meet a more pathetic bunch of people than the people that are in the House of Representatives?
Well, I think they have certain expectations.
Yeah, what are they?
People are going to sit still for that seem to be out of whack, Sean.
Well, they really are. I mean, it's just so bad. Look, I just had Dave Bratt on, and I had Jim Jordan on. I happen to be a fan of the Freedom Caucus. These guys roll up their sleeves. They themselves save health care in the House. And it wasn't ideal, but it was actually workable. It was the beginning of chipping away at Obamacare. But, Pat Buchanan, they didn't even have a debt ceiling bill, and they were off for nearly the whole month of August. And they come back, and they had no clue how to deal with the debt ceiling. So the president needs to get money to Texas, and he made a deal with Schumer and Pelosi. I don't blame him.
I don't blame him in the least. I mean, he's a very much a can-do guy. He's a guy that gets buildings done on time and even ahead of time. Comes down to Washington, and they got the major piece of legislation, dealing with Obamacare, which the Republicans promised to do in 3 straight elections, and they don't know how to do it, and they didn't do it. I mean, I understand Mitch's problem with McCain and Murkowski and Susan Collins, but I'll tell you, Sean, the way Mitch talks, you really wonder whether the Congress of the United States that presently constituted in this 21st century, in a time of cable and internet and all the rest of it, it's talking about taking 2 years to do a single piece of legislation, and that's the way we work up here. The question is the relevance of Congress to the modern era. It's not simply the Republican Party. In the intermediate term in December, look, if they don't give Trump something on infrastructure or on tax reform or on immigration, on DACA and the rest of it, he's going to go work with Schumer and Pelosi because he wants a record as president. He wants to work with Republicans to produce it. But if they're not going to produce it from their end, he's going to go find somebody that will.
Well, it's that, and when are they going to get anything done? Now, look, Pat, they've got 14 weeks till Christmas, and they've got a pretty big agenda. Now, instead of going with a 15% corporate tax and the president's plan, I happen to think it's Reagan-esque. 7 brackets to 3, 15% corporate tax, middle-class tax cut, repatriation, multinationals to incentivize them to bring trillions of dollars back to this country to build factories, manufacturing centers. Then, of course, energy independence. Then the president gets rid of burdensome regulation to allow these businesses to flourish without government breathing down their neck every 5 seconds. A perfect business environment coupled with energy independence, we'd be golden in the economy.
Sean, I would certainly go along with that. I might have different things if I were down there. But if I were a Republican, I'd say, let's work it all out. Let's get something done we can agree on. We're not all going to be happy with everything. And let's get our tax bill down to the President of the United States and have him sign it. Now, of course, the point is, if the Republicans can't do that by, December 1st or something, then I can't blame Trump for saying, look, we need a corporate tax cut. Maybe we need to gear this thing to the working class, and maybe we need to raise a little bit on the super rich to make the Democrats happy. And if I have to do that, I will. But the point you're making, and I am too, is Republicans have to get together and put together a tax bill through both houses consistent with their principles, policies, and beliefs, and get it on the president's desk. If he don't, he's going to find another way and other people to work with.
Well, then they're going to get to the point where I think the American people will walk away from the Republican Party and say, we've given you everything and you didn't keep any promises. They seem to be lacking any identity. Pat, you've been a Republican your whole life. I've been a registered conservative for a good many years now, with one little switch back to the Republican Party for a primary, but I've been mostly a registered conservative. In New York, you can do that. And I don't recognize this Republican Party. I don't know what they stand for here.
Well, I have to say I was an apostate of the Republican Party when I ran reform in 2000. But let me say, and I came back into the Republican Party. But I do sort of understand the party, but time is passing the Republican Party by. Time is passing the Congress by. I mean, Mitch, I can understand what he's saying, but he's talking 1970s or something. He's got to get the stuff done, and, it comes to a point where excuses don't work anymore. And what Trump is saying is, fine, you can explain that to the folks when you go back home, but I'm going to get a deal done by X date, and if you don't get me the bill, I'm going to go work with Pelosi and Schumer and get as much as I can, because I believe in getting things done, and I want a successful presidency, and I want to do most of what I promised, or as much of what I promised, as I can.
Well, I like the president's agenda. I think it's Reagan-esque. Is there anything in his agenda maybe short of trade? And I know you agree with the president on trade, but anything short of the president's agenda that you could argue is not conservative?
No, I think he's got his agenda, as I see it, is populist conservative economic patriotism on trade. I think control the borders. I agree with those senators cutting back on legal immigration, secure the border, stop the illegal immigration, send the illegals back. I agree with all this. I would say stay out of these foreign wars. But there's a general, and then the other side is sort of the older conservative that Trump defeated. But many of the ideas, I like the ideas on Federalist Society, judges and justices. That's excellent. I'm all for it. So there's a huge amount we agree on, but you got to start getting it done. This is the problem.
This is the
end isn't working.
This is the bare minimum for me. The bare minimum is the president's tax plan. All right, if they have to go to 16% corporate tax to make the numbers work, 17%, I can live with it. If it goes much higher, I really think they don't understand what conservatism means.
I agree. Let me tell you. Look, these corporations small business is the primary hire and people that employ people in the United States of America. If it were up to me, I would take the small businesses, about 99% of them, I would eliminate the corporate income tax on that, and I go along with your larger corporations, 15% on that, repatriate those monies, and I would take, if Trump has to, and he's got to cut a deal, I'm sorry, it's the top 1/10 of 1% or whatever it is.
Right.
I would go along with Bannon's 42 or whatever it is to get the thing done if the Republicans won't do their end.
Well, that's the risk we're going to run. I don't agree with Bannon one bit about, listen, you give the middle class their tax cuts because they pay the burden of taxes anyway. Corporations don't pay taxes. They pass those funds onto the consumer. So the consumer benefits that way. But more importantly, you incentivize those corporations and the multinationals. Sure. They've got trillions. They won't bring it back to the U.S. if the government's going to take 30, 35, 40%.
Well, let me tell you something else about the corporate tax.
Yeah.
You cut it down to 15%, and what's going to happen is a lot of these headquarters companies all move abroad, they're going to say 15% in the U.S. Let's move the headquarters there as long as we can make it long term. The lower the corporate tax, the more the incentive here, the more the incentive to produce here and everything. And so that makes all the sense in the world. You're right. Reagan used to tell me, corporations don't pay taxes. People do.
The people pay the taxes. They pass it on. But I think the freest money in all of this are the multinationals because it's so much of it. And people, if they don't understand that multinational corporations, they're in the business to make money, not throw it away. So you let them in at 10% or less and incentivize them to build in Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Missouri, Florida, any state that needs assistance, that needs economic growth, where you have millions looking for jobs. Well, you get
right. I would tell them, look, you can bring it all home, your 3 or 5 trillion, whatever you got over there, at 10%, but you got to get it home within 2 years.
Exactly. Invest, and by the way, they'll be happy.
Get it home in 2 years, you can face Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, exactly. Get the money in fast. But the idea is you want them to bring the money here. Look at remember when Ireland cut their corporate taxes to the lowest in the industrialized world? By the way, our peeps did that, Pat. Those are your people.
Right.
Of course, you know what an Irish 7-course meal is, right? You know what it is?
No, it's six potatoes and what else?
No, a 6-pack and a potato. By the way, if I said that about anybody else but myself.
One good thing about the Irish is they make ethnic jokes about themselves.
That's it. That's the only people I'll make ethnic jokes about. And it's all true. If you've ever been to an Irish wake, it's all true. There's no lying about it. All right, just kidding, of course. 800-941-SEAN, a toll-free telephone number. More with Pat in a minute. And as we continue, Patrick J. Buchanan is with us. We'll get to your calls also coming up. We have the latest also on Hurricane Irma now bearing down on Florida, all of South Florida and the entire state. Every city is going to be hit and hit hard. And we'll get an update from Joe Bastardi coming up later in the program. Pat Buchanan, notice how the president did a really good job with Texas. And the governor did a really good job. And frankly, every local politician, with the exception of the Houston mayor that said, everybody don't listen to what you were told. Now go back to your homes. Forget him. But everybody worked together. Lives were saved. Monies are now being sent. Frankly, a right purpose and role for the American government. When our fellow neighbors are in need, we're going to help them out. We got to help them rebuild. And the only thing they can pick on is Melania's shoes.
I know. she had wore spiked heels.
By the way, the Exhibit A that Trump did a great job.
You got to admire the media. You really.
You really. I don't admire them at all. I'm sick of them.
I will say that they're so miserable and dreadful. I mean, there are times. I mean, I thought Trump went down there and look, he's not a touchy-feely type, but he's down there clearly cheering these people up. I'm with you. We're going to help you out. You know, that's his style. And so they say he didn't hug anybody. He wasn't in Houston.
Yeah, no, he didn't. He didn't hug enough people.
He didn't hug anybody.
There's no empathy. No, he just went down there giving out food, making sure everything's working, making sure that there's enough people on the ground for rescue, coordinating with the governor and local officials.
You know, many of these, I feel sorry for some of these journalists. They really are. They seem to be just unhappy and miserable. The only thing that makes them happy is if Trump's in trouble.
No, well, I got to tell you, they're almost like drug addicts at this point because they wake up in the morning and they need their fix and they're addicted to the hatred of Trump. And they can't go a day without expressing the hatred or a conspiracy. And all of this is now beginning, I think, to boomerang back. What do you think?
Well, I do think. I think that, look, I mean, there's no question about it. And I talked to a famous liberal journalist talked to me off the record and everything. He said, never seen this kind of brutality and bitterness and the attacks on Trump. And there's no doubt they've damaged him to a degree. But let me say this. Real permanent damage has been done to the American media, far more than in the Agnew case, where it was an argument over whether they sharply disagreed with us or not, and they were on the other side on Vietnam and Agnew and Nixon and everything. Here, I think you've got permanent damage done to the media's credibility, and they go so far, and I mean, look, I pick up the Washington Post. I've been reading it for my 60 years or something. Some days you pick it up, and everything in there.
Unbelievable.
It's not attacking Trump.
Yeah, I know. By the way, they call me occasionally for comment, and I'm like, why would I comment to fake news? I honestly...
I think, the fake news thing, I mean, Trump's that sticks. Everybody's picked that up, and it's not simply a phrase or a slur or something. Many, many, many people believe they really just... They're engineering and pushing a particular agenda to
they think they think we the people are stupid, and we made a mistake. And they think they know better than all of us. And they're so arrogant that that's their mindset. All right, Pat Buchanan, always love having you, my friend. Thank you.